Greetings, fellow quitters. Welcome back to the CMDQ podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Maari Casey.
And I'm John Pelfrey.
If you're at all familiar with the secret or the law of attraction, you're probably familiar with the concept of abundance and scarcity mindsets. The principle behind it is essentially that believing you have enough of what you need actually contributes to the outcome where that's true. On the other hand, worrying that you don't makes it more likely that you won't. Today, we're going to talk about how our mindset shapes reality, which feels like a lot of responsibility. So let's dive in.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you think a scarcity mindset is, and how is that reflected in people when you sort of, work with them, whether it's freelancers or jobs or anything else?
Yeah, I feel like this concept, I'm glad it's in vogue. It's definitely come up over the last 5 years. It's become more popular to talk about. And I think it's a huge one. I'm actually trying to bring this concept to my kids, which is a little bit of a stretch. But, when we work with freelancers and just people in general, especially when they're launching their business, a lot of times, even if they're the most positive people, they can kind of jump into the scarcity mindset of panic, I think, a little bit. I think fear brings up a lot of scarcity. So it's the idea of I don't have enough, I'm not going to have enough. And that causes panic. And I think the negative side effect of that when you're starting your business is that it's you'll take a lot of jobs that you don't really want to take, or, you're going to operate in this panic way. So you're going to maybe get taken advantage of in certain ways. And so I see it especially with freelancers when they're first kind of moving into where they have to create their own universe where it's oh my gosh, I'm panicking because I don't think I'm going to have enough. And once I can get past that idea of there's not enough out there for me, then it's funny because the world really starts to open up. And I know sometimes it takes 6 months to a year to get past that, where you have a capacity of work or income coming in where the magical holy grail is you start turning jobs down or you start passing them to other freelancers. When you get to that point, I think you'd be really surprised at how much things start to open up. And I remember when I first got to that point as a freelancer, and I was I can't do it, but let me introduce you to this person. And I just trusted that job would eventually come back to me in some way. And it always did. So I do feel like it takes a little bit to get past that panic of, okay, now I have to, hunt what I'm going to eat. But once you kind of get past that point, you realize the forest has lots of animals out there, or salads if you're a vegetarian. So you have to kind of get past that. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's just human nature to really know and be concerned about, am I going to have enough food to eat? Am I going to have shelter over my head? Am I going to have clothes on my back? And same thing is true when it comes to work, especially in today's world where the news that we get hit with sort of 24/7 is all catastrophized and scary. And, the world is ending, or this is happening, or, climate change is real or isn't real, or all the things that it starts to seep into your brain. It starts to seep into your mind. And you sit around and go I have to conserve whatever I have, whatever my tools, my materials, my cash, my material possession, everything, because it could all go away in an instant. And if you watch enough of that stuff sort of culturally, you start to get paranoid about it too. And so I think that this is partly about work and partly about money, but it's also about this sort of bigger question just generally in our society about the unknown, the lack of security that we sort of feel from the things that we see on the news every day. And I know that definitely affects my mentality more than the side of me that questions, could I go out and get money? Could I go out and provide for my family? Could I do those things? Generally I'm confident in that. My fear, my scarcity fear is on the other side. It's the things that I can't control, the things that I don't have sort of, any ability to affect. And then what happens then, AI is the big question in the world, especially in our world, in the creative services space with freelancers and everything else. It's we don't know. We have a pretty good idea that it's going to affect jobs. It's going to affect a lot but we don't know what that impact is going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We're just sort of all along for the ride, and we kind of have to adjust as we go. And so that's where my scarcity comes from, is that type of fear. I don't know.
Well, that's a good fear. I think what is coming for us, and we don't know about yet. It's interesting because the idea of the mindset, the movement towards mindset and stuff has been around for a while, and it's scarcity. It feels a little woo-woo-y and unicorns and meditation and stuff. But you and I talk about sports a lot, and I had this conversation with my daughter this morning about how it is important to go into situations. For her, it was going into a middle school algebra test. in a volleyball game, but it was important to go into situations with your mind open. That it's like this is even if you want to say like I'm not feeling like it's going to be a good day, or I feel like this is going to be a failure, or I hate algebra or whatever. But it's like the power of positive thinking. I think like I 100% believe makes a difference. It's not always great. And you don't always want to walk around being like, oh, everything's wonderful. It's all perfect. It's not that. It's just that you can tell yourself, you can tell yourself like, I'm bad at this, or this is not good, or I'm not going to be able to make enough money to have a freelance business, or whatever it is. And the power of self-talk, even if you don't say it verbally, but just how you carry yourself and what you believe, absolutely, I 100% believe affects the outcomes of what you get. Because you're telling your body, I'm not good at this, or I can't do this. So your body's like, all right, well, that's not an option. Let's shut that down. And I really believe like what you put out there, may not be 100% of what you want to get back, but it's generally better than, putting out negative energy. So I feel like that is something that I really have adopted in the last, I would say 5 years or so.
Yeah. I mean, one of my very good friends was a guest on this podcast, Jared Levine. He's a mindfulness coach, and we hit tennis balls at least once a week. And we talk about this stuff about we were just having this conversation about almost being able to manifest the outcome of a situation in a tennis match just based on your sort of mental picture. And it was the same kind of thing. He was like, I don't want to get too like woo woo. And it's not this idea that like you could create or manifest things just out of nothing. But if you are visualizing positive outcomes and positive things, and you're visualizing, where you want to hit the ball or how you want to play the match, what your plan is, if you're playing with that intent to do it in a certain way, you are far more likely to end up on the positive side of the score than you are if you visualize things the other direction, which is, oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm not hitting my forehand well. I'm struggling with this. I can't move to do this. If you're thinking in those terms, you're much more likely to sort of like self-fulfill that prophecy of, yeah, I'm terrible today. It's not working out, as opposed to fulfilling your own, prophecy of, oh, I'm playing great. I'm feeling good. I'm moving really well. I'm putting the ball where I want. I'm hitting it out in front, like, you have all those like positive feelings. And he said, everyone underestimates that exact thing. Just how that little simple perspective of your self-talk and the way that you see yourself playing and what you see yourself doing, that really, really shows up. And so on those days when you're not feeling great, if you just can sort of generate some positive self-talk, it will turn into, oh, I'm feeling okay now. I'm all right. Yeah. And then it'll get into a little bit more of like, oh, actually, I'm hitting the ball really well. Like, that was a great shot. Let's see if we can do some more of that. We just had a conversation on Friday talking about how you can kind of like manifest that stuff in yourself, and at the same time, self-sabotage on the other side of it. Mm-hmm. It's such a small shift, and it almost seems like it's not possible or like it's not real. Like that's what he was talking about. He's like, there's all kinds of, science and data to back up this idea of, but it just seems too easy or too good to be true. And sometimes you just have to believe it's going to be okay, and it ends up being okay.
Yeah. I think once you get through enough hard stuff, I mean, you and I are older than our children, as usually happens. But
hopefully.
It's like when they're young and they haven't gone through hard things, or when you're in your 20s or even 30s, you've only gone through a few hard things. You haven't got the reps of going through hard things yet. But after you've got the reps of going through hard things, yeah, you're like, all right, this is one of those hard things again. Like, I know it's going to end. I've just got to get through it. And I think that's also really helpful, right? It's like you understand that that's part of what you have to get through, and you just have to kind of power through. But I feel like the idea of entering into things, and this is a silly thing, and if you see me doing this, you'll probably be like, wow, this person's crazy. But I've read so much about how you carry and Terry, our buddy Terry, who we're going to have on soon, talks about body language, but how you carry yourself, what you wear, and then also just the idea of smiling. So sometimes when I'm having a rough time, where I wake up and I just feel like, boo, sad, I just try to smile. Like, I just close my eyes and just smile, even if I'm not feeling good. Because just like lifting your eyes, there's like something in science that's like, if you're smiling, your body triggers this response of like, we're happy. And it triggers all this dopamine that's like, all right, we're going to be okay. And so I try to remind myself when I'm feeling dumpy, like, just give myself a little smile break. Because, okay, this sounds crazy, but it really, it actually really works, because smiling or laughing or finding something that's like something that always makes you laugh, like whatever it is, have that track saved on your phone. Something like, I just need a little pick me up, like something that will just make you cry. And that will honestly be an instant mood booster, like better than like a glass of wine or, anything else. And so I think that those are some techniques that I kind of follow to keep myself in that idea of like, okay, things are going to turn around. We're going to be okay. There's plenty of fish in the sea, opportunities in the universe. But yeah, I think it's important to pay attention to that kind of stuff and see how you can get yourself back into the right path.
Yeah. So this is slightly on topic, but maybe not. Have you ever seen the movie Boiler Room? It starred a young Ben Affleck and Giovanni Ribisi, and it was this movie like, I don't know, it was late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. Anyway, a boiler room is a place where people sell terrible stocks and take advantage of people who aren't smart investors, and they go get their money and sort of steal the money from them. It's a terrible concept, but the movie itself is a great movie to learn about sales and understanding things. Like Ben Affleck does this big speech where he talks about ABC, always be closing, which, also comes from Wall Street and other things like that. But another one of his phrases is act as if. And he says, act as if you're the boss, act as if you're the man, act as if you're going to succeed at all costs. This idea that the way that you put yourself out there, exactly what you said, like he summed it up in that phrase of like, act as if, and then you, at the end of that, you put whatever it is you want to be, act as if I'm a champion, act as if I'm I'm a winner, act as if I'm going to close this deal, act as if, I'm going to produce the best thing for my client, whatever that is, act as if I'm the best chef in the entire world tonight when I'm making my dinner. Like whatever that thing is, if you start to put that on in your head, it does start to affect you. It's that, fake it till you make it, I guess is another way to put that. It's just, I like that phrase, act as if, a little bit more, because fake it till you make it sort of feels like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I agree.
This feels like I'm the boss. Like I can do this. I control the situation. This is my situation to own, whatever that is. And so if I'm relating that back to scarcity or not, if I act as if there's abundance out there for me, if I act as if I can go get clients, I can go close deals, I can do good work, then it creates that confidence. And it is funny, but if you watch that movie and you see that clip, and I could probably find it on YouTube or whatever, it does kind of pump you up, even though, the underlying side of the movie is like they're stealing money from people or whatever. But he has a way of like just getting you sort of like, jacked up to go sell some crappy stocks. But it could work for sort of anything else.
I like that a lot. I agree. I like act as if over fake it till you make it, because it is too, if you really believe that, this is going to sound like cheesy, but anything's possible in a lot of senses, and you really believe that in your heart of hearts, then it just is a matter of you getting the steps to get there. And I think if you're living in this kind of abundance mindset, and I feel like I do a lot of times, sometimes it borders on stubborn, but where it's like, I will get this done. It might mean I have to do this, this, and this, and this, and this to get there. But I really believe like if I keep putting it out there and keep trying, keep working at it, then we'll figure this out together. I like the act as if, because it puts you in this power seat where it's like, okay, nobody's against me. I'm not trying to pretend. I'm not faking it till I make it. I'm like, I'm in charge of my own destiny in a way. And I think that's that's empowering. And I think the idea of living in abundance over scarcity is empowering. I think the people that I see, we all know the people I used to call it like the Eeyore syndrome, where it's like, nobody likes me. It's going to rain, And it is, you see that. I knew a few people, I've known a few people like that. And it is you see it happen to them because they put that out there and they kind of do this little spiral spin where it's just like, well, of course I knew it was going to rain today because I didn't bring my umbrella. And it's like, and then you're like, well, you just see this kind of manifestation of these things. And it's like, the more they spin and the more they ruminate on what everything is going to go and, have things that come against them, they're just setting themselves up to find that stuff. And I tell that to my kids too. I was like, I want you to go today and look for good things. Like, don't look for things that are going to be wrong, because you'll find them, just like you'll find things that are good. I was like, make yourself a treasure hunter of good things, even small things like, I've got an extra 5 minutes to finish my sandwich at lunch. It can be really small things, but I think that's the difference between looking at scarcity as a mindset, looking at it as abundance. It's like, look for good things, and then know that if you look for bad things, you will find them. They will be there in front of you.
Yeah. And isn't it really the same thing? Like, I mean, the bad thing could be a good thing or the good thing could be a bad thing. It's just your perspective on how it works out. So like if I left my umbrella at home and it rains, yeah, okay, well, of course it rained because I didn't bring my umbrella. But am I going to bring my umbrella everywhere I go all the time just in case it might rain? Like the flip side of that is like, look at all the times that I didn't have to take my umbrella with me and it was sunny outside. And
perfect.
And it's like, you can always find the good or the bad in any situation. It's just a question of like, how do you want to live your life? Do you want to live your life in fear of losing it? Of losing everything and of losing your job, of losing your opportunity? Or do you want to live it sort of like, with a sense of adventure? And I think looking on the positive side of things allows you to feel like life is an adventure. It's something that is to be experienced and explored, as opposed to something that I should be scared of and I should stay in my home and I shouldn't do anything. And I should, I'm afraid that the monsters are going to get me or the viruses will get me or the what, like we're getting into the winter season, right? And, people start to try to avoid public places and all of that because we don't want to get sick and everything. And it's like, well, I mean, yes, I could not go anywhere for 4 months out of the year and stay at home and have all my food delivered to me. But that's no fun. That's no way to live life.
Fun.
I'm going to go to holiday parties. And if I get sick, I get sick, but I'm going to have a good time while I'm there,
Yeah.
Like, so to me, that's like, life is an adventure. If you're not out there enjoying it and having a good time doing it, then you're just missing out on a lot of opportunity. And when it comes to income, it's the same thing. If you treat your business, your small business, whether you're a freelancer, small business owner, whatever, if you treat that as an adventure and an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to improve and get better, but also just to see what happens in the world and where these things can take you, nothing ever goes the way you planned, but that's not a bad thing. That could actually be a really good thing. It depends on how you look at it. Like, my plan didn't work out exactly. That's a terrible thing. Well, yeah, but is there an opportunity on the other side? And, is there a way for me to get better and make more money?
I think that's like why I enjoy working with you too, is because you and I both have this kind of sandbox mentality to working where it's like, we're going to try this and we're going to do this until this isn't viable. And then maybe this will open up. And I think it is that the thing I realized about business and just employment and jobs is it's not this linear path by any means. And when one thing ends, it's not a failure. It's just like, this is now done. Now we start something else, And I think a lot of times when people, especially people who are employed and run into unemployment issues and things like that, or transitioning jobs, there's this idea that I'm talking to a colleague right now about this who's like thinking about taking a step back from a job that's really keeping her super, super busy and overstressed. And she's in a time right now where she needs some personal time. And I was like, it's okay to step back. And if you can make a little bit less so that you can have more time, that doesn't mean that you can't accelerate later and expect that there's going to be more out there in the future. And I think that's one thing that's really cool is like, if you can understand the opportunities are always available, right now you're just pursuing this one, but once you pursue that one, it doesn't shut these off. They're still in the ecosystem of things that, it's kind of it's an exciting way to look at working and it's an exciting way to look at life because you're not sure what's going to come to you next. And I think when you're pursuing this kind of, I feel like scarcity sometimes creates this kind of hoarding mentality where it's like, this is my, this is my dance space and you can't come in or I put a fence around my life. It cuts off relationships and it cuts off other opportunities because if I was doing one thing, I'm saying all I do is bake cookies and someone comes to me and is like, would you ever bake pies? And you're like, no, I'm only baking cookies. So what if I bake a pie and it's not as good? Then you're kind of shutting off a whole other opportunity that you didn't know could be great. And so the idea of pursuing things with an open mind or abundance, I think is super valuable for business because you don't know what you don't know in the future. Like we didn't know AI was going to be coming in. And if a scarcity mindset would cause us to say like, oh my gosh, we need to panic and figure out how we can block this from all of our clients so they don't know it's a thing, which is impossible. Then we might be missing an opportunity to see how we can use AI in our business and how we can train our freelancers to use AI in their business and how we can help our clients utilize AI in their business. And so I think it's all in how, like you said, it's all in how you approach it and how you look at like your perspective on things.
Yeah, I think if we looked at it as try to avoid AI, that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for losing a business. That you can't stop it. So you have to embrace it. AI is it's just a new tool like everything else. And there was a transition in the creative space when we went from drawing things on paper to putting them on computers, and people still had jobs, and all of that. It's gonna let's not believe all the doomsday. It's just going to be different.
Mhm.
And, you know, I mean, on the other side of that, maybe you get an opportunity to learn how to grow your own food too. Like,
Yeah.
and that would be, that would be like doomsday scenario, absolute worst scenario, right? You lose your job, whatever, the world collapses, all the things happen, they're terrible,
Mhm.
whatever. We can still go back to, a life that still has abundance in different ways. And I think that's another way to look at all that too, is like, I could learn to grow my own food and then feel self-sufficient in that way. I could learn to build my own shelter and feel self-sufficient in that way.
Mhm.
And, of course we don't want to do that. And that sounds like an awful thing and whatever, but it would bring me closer to my friends and neighbors because they would be here. And, so I could look at it as like,
Pioneering.
oh, this is terrible. Or I could look at it as like, okay, this is just part of the adventure. I know that that's an extreme example and I don't wish any ill on anyone, but it is.
I was
again,
researching ham radios this morning, so it's fine.
yeah, I don't know anything about ham radios. Maybe I should learn. But all right, so one little question here before we move on to the lightning round. Like, how we're talking about this as if we're sort of the king and queen of abundance and mentality, and like we have it all the answers. And I'll tell you that I'm a realist about things. For those of us who are a little more Eeyore about it, what are some like basic baby steps that we can sort of like just start to build this abundance mentality mindset, get away from the scarcity?
I think I think part of it is doing what I talked about. Like when you're feeling like closed off, just think of things that you can do physically and mentally to open up, whether it is like smiling or standing up tall or, talking to people. And I mean, I think when I started my business and I was typically in that like, scarcity mindset of like, oh my gosh, I've got to figure out how to orchestrate all this income. I think talking to people who are like in a ssimilar mindset stage is really valuable. And I think part of what you can do is one of my favorite exercises is there's a phrase for it. I can't remember what it's called. It's called fear. I think it's called fear setting. I think it's Tim Ferriss talks about it a lot, but it's basically where you catastrophize all the way down to the absolute worst case scenario. So for instance, for me, when I was like, okay, I'm leaving this great agency job where everyone is like, this is super cool. And you get to wear jeans to work. Why are you leaving? You're crazy. You're making good money and you're traveling. I'm leaving this job and I'm going to try to freelance. And the worst case scenario is nobody ever hires me to freelance and I make no money. Nobody wants to work with me. I try to go back to my full-time job. They won't hire me. Nobody will hire me ever in the history of anything. And so I have no income in my field. So that's the worst case scenario, right? So then what do I do? So then you kind of build back up. What would I do in that scenario? Well, at that point I was married. Like my husband can make some money. We could be good for a while. I have some savings. I could start I could get a job at Starbucks. I could work at whatever. I started thinking about how I could chip that fear away. And then that opens it up a little bit more to be like, okay, that's the absolute worst case scenario. Chances are that's not going to happen because you see how ridiculous it is if you actually go through the exercise of, making a most catastrophic thing ever. You're like, okay, well, that's not so bad. So why am I afraid of this? Why am I closing myself off and living with this being my fear anchor when like I could also just say like, what if I make more? What if I make more than my goal is? And so I think doing that exercise on both sides, well, if I make more, what if my goal's $2,000 a month, what if I make 4? What will I do with that extra money? Okay, well, I'll save some for my IRA and I'll put some on vacation. What if I make 3 times? So I think going both directions all the way to the absolute worst case scenario and then how you could get out of it. And then going to, but what if I do even better? And living in that world, I think helps you to like understand how you feel physically and emotionally when you're kind of living in both mindsets. So those are 2 exercises.
Yeah, I really like that one. I like that one a lot. It does sort of take the pain out of it. And you need a contingency plan too. And that's a good way to develop a contingency plan. Worst case scenario, I go work a retail job somewhere and then, retrain myself, build something new, go into a different industry. There's so many different ways. I made probably the worst possible financial decision that most people could ever make in their life, which was to open an art gallery in 2009 in the middle of the Great Recession in East Durham, where there was no other retail around me anywhere. And I had to drive all of my own foot traffic to a specific building that was 6 blocks from the courthouse in downtown. Now, everybody goes over there now and they're like, oh, there's Ponysaurus and there's this and there's that. And there's all this. Back then, there was nothing. Nothing. It was a dumb decision. It was a terrible decision. Did I lose my house? No, I did not. Why didn't I lose my house? Well, one, I had friends and family that helped me out. And that was a big part of it. Two, I had a handful of people that believed in what we were doing and they helped us out. And then I had other people that helped me get some odd jobs while we had the gallery. I was working other odd jobs just to be able to pay my own bills. And so, yeah, did I have to work a lot more? Did I have to put a lot more effort into, being able to do that? Yeah. Did I miss my mortgage payment a few times? Yes. Did I get to the other side of that and pay it back off and pay my debt off and do all of that? Yes, I did. Was it hard? Absolutely. Yeah, it was. It was really, really hard. I learned a lot of really good lessons about it, through it, but I still didn't lose everything. And that to me was like the most catastrophic situation. What happened with us, we were open for 6 months and we had 4 sales total selling art in 6 months. We blew through all of our money, every bit of it, all of our savings, all of our contingency, all of it. And we still, just scrapped our way through. So you will find an answer. You will find a way to the other side. You will get another odd job while you build this thing. You will work on other skills. You will have friends and family help you and support you. That those things are there for you. You have to ask for them sometimes and you have to accept them and sometimes swallow your pride a lot. And I went to my landlord and said, can't pay these bills. Kick me out or not, but then you're not going to have a tenant here and whatever. And they said, nope, we want you here. Pay us what you can. So sometimes it's just about having those hard conversations and surviving and getting through it.
And so that scenario, let me ask you this, because I feel like you're very, you have an abundance mindset. I think you're very open, but coming from that situation to where you are now, I'm sure coming out of that probably was hard. And then having probably a little bit of like, okay, now we got to protect. Like, what was the transition for you from that point to where you are now? Whether it's like, did you have an abundance mindset immediately after that situation, or did you kind of slowly build that back?
I mean, I was straight up broken after 5 years. Like I was really just mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, very broken. But coming out of it, I knew how little I needed in order to survive. That was a big lesson. Like how little stuff I needed, how creature comforts, like we learned all those lessons. They were hard lessons, but it gave me the confidence then to slowly build back and say like, yeah, I mean, we could go do other things and take other chances. And, and I'm smarter because of it, but it did take a while. It took, it took me getting a regular full-time job, 40 hours a week at an agency in a situation that I really didn't want to be in, but it allowed us to get our feet back under us and start paying off some debt and some other things. And I was there for 18 months before I was like, hey, I want to get out on my own again, like an idiot. And then I met you and then we, so it's like, it didn't stop me from going to the next thing. I didn't like stay in that job, but I hold on to it for dear life. Like it was the only job I was ever going to get. I was like, I've already been through the worst of this. What?
I'm not scared.
I'm not scared. And I think that's part of what you learn if you go through those struggles too, is you learn that when you get on the other side of it, like living in the not safe way or whatever, however people look at that, it teaches you so much that it's valuable. Like I look at that time and I say, that was my MBA. I don't have an MBA from Duke or UNC. I spent more money than the MBA would have cost me to go to Duke or UNC. And that probably would have been more valuable in some ways, but I also would have been stuck in corporate consulting, traveling all over the place if I'd have done that. So, but I look at that as that was my MBA. That was the thing. It taught me so much. And I wouldn't want to change it, even though it was incredibly difficult. Yeah. Personal life, financial life, all of this, it was hard. But yeah, you come on the other side and you're like, I mean, I can do anything I want now.
Yeah.
Nothing's as hard as that.
You feel a little bit more bulletproof, I think, when you go through hard things or you build something and I think you come out on the other side feeling a little bit more bulletproof. And I can't imagine living in a scarcity mindset. I mean, I know there's times when I will get like that, and it is hard to, scenario where it's like there's a layoff or there's something just personally that hard happens, or we hit like a slow time in business and that's hard. But to live in that forever, I think would be so limiting that I hope that people don't do that. I think people go through seasons of that mindset. But, I think it's this, as soon as you can identify that you're limiting yourself because you're afraid, then I think it's time to pay attention to how your mind is focusing. So I think that's a good sign that you're living in a scarcity. If you're like, I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid I'll lose something. it'll mess something up, whatever that might be. It's time to look at how you can reframe it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So lightning round. Is it true that you have to spend money to make money?
I don't think so. I think,
Really?
well, I think if you consider your time being money, then that's the other cliche. But I think you can get out there and you can do work. Like you can start mowing lawns and you don't need to buy a lawnmower. You can just get out there and start doing stuff. So I think that you can create income by just using your own time.
Yeah. Assuming that you already have a lawnmower, then you can mow other people's lawns. Yeah. If not, then you need to spend $200 on a lawnmower in order
to buy a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think if you, we both just finished the Sweaty Startup book, which is a really great book.
So good.
And he does talk about in there, I'm blanking on his name.
Huberman.
Yes. Yeah. Nick Huberman. He talks about, think about something that you could earn $500 doing this weekend with whatever you have. What would someone else pay you $500 to do? With any of the tools or skills or abilities or whatever that you have, you could, without any extra cost, go make $500. And he's like, that's your Sweaty Startup. That's the thing that you can start to do. And I think that's a really amazing way to look at starting a business. I don't have to invest $100,000 in equipment to start my lawn mowing business with, 0 turn radius lawnmowers and a big truck and a trailer and a whole, I don't have to do it that way. I could just, look at what are the tools that I have. I have a weed eater. Okay, well, maybe I can't mow entire lawns, but if I have a weed eater, I can at least get people to pay me to, weed eat around their sidewalks and their driveways and whatever. And that's at least a start, right? I thought it was an amazing way to look at starting a business.
I love that. It's also just that whole book is based on this idea of abundance, because I think a lot of times when you have those smaller businesses, you're like, it can never, you start thinking, it can never get big enough to work and create enough income for me. You kind of automatically think scarcity. I could never have a lawn mowing business because who's going to have a lawn mowing business and be able to add to their 401k and take their kids through college? Well, there's a lot of landscaping businesses that started as a lawn mowing business that do just that. So I think the whole mentality around that book is very abundance-based thinking, which is, I think, why we both find ourselves attracted to, because it talks to all these concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next one. Do you think potential clients or employers are able to pick up on desperation?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you have one that's a little unscrupulous, or maybe they're in a pinch situation, that leaves you open to being taken advantage of, whether it's from an income, hourly rate type of standpoint, or timelines, or hey, can we just add one more deliverable under the scope, even though we haven't talked about it? And so you don't want to do that. And hopefully the person you're working for isn't going to take advantage of that, but sometimes they might do it even unknowingly.
Yeah. Yes. Again, that goes back to that act as if sort of mentality. You can see it. We interview a lot of people for a lot of different things, and you can see people who are desperate versus those who are not. And I know that it's difficult sometimes when you're feeling that pinch to feel like you need it. But the more confident you are, the more you can. The ability to say no is super powerful. And if you can say no, I'm not available this week to do the job, but I will be on the 20th. If, those types of things set you up, one, that makes people think you're busy. That makes people think that you're ready to go. So, just that ability to feel confident in your skills and your time and all of that, it really radiates and it makes people want to work with you. And I think that's the thing to understand, is that you want people who want to work with you. You don't want people who feel sorry for you to hire you.
No.
That's,
yeah.
you don't
You're not
want
starting a charity.
Job. No,
right?
Yeah. And you don't want a pity job, because it does open them up to either low expectations of you and your work, or the possibility that they might sort of abuse the situation a little bit. All right, next one. How do you keep an abundance mindset when everything keeps getting more expensive?
I don't think abundance is necessarily tied to expense or money. I think it kind of creates opportunities which can create income. So I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive, unless you're in a place where you're just I can't afford to go grocery shopping and pay for my bill. I think that's a different place. I think once your basic expenses are covered and you're comfortable, I think it's a little different. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the simple fact is the world has gotten a lot more expensive in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, significantly more. The cost of everything has gone way up. And that is very, very scary. But the other side of that is purely economics. Speaking about inflation and how that works, people expect that your rates will go up because the cost of everything goes up. And so everything kind of inflates similarly. And even though I look back at a time when I could buy a $8 cheeseburger at a bar, and now it's an $18 cheeseburger at a bar, and it's the same bar, in the same way, I need to price myself and my services and my products or whatever it is that I'm doing in a similar way. I can't just continue to price myself the way I did 10 years ago and expect to be able to meet those demands. You have to move with the times. I think that, to me, that's the way to look at that. It's like you have to adjust and move to the times and hope that, everyone else is moving in the same direction. But at the same time, sometimes we do have to go with a little less, and that's life. Like, I don't want to be cruel about it, but it is like sometimes we can't, splurge on the vacation, and we can't, go out to eat every night or whatever it is. I don't want to be the guy that says you can't ever do that stuff, but I think that, learning to be frugal is an opportunity to feel more empowered in other ways too. It allows me control over my big life decisions and life choices. Yeah, I can have an abundance mindset because my abundance isn't found in money. My abundance is found in my friends and my family, my community, and the time I get to spend with other people. And that's my abundance. I am very rich when it comes to that stuff, no matter what my bank account says. And that will always be my priority.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, same. I say an amen to that, because I think for me, my abundance is time, and what time I can give to my family, myself, my friends, and that's where my focus is. Maybe I think the more that I get older, the more I guard that above all else.
Yeah,
sure.
100%. Especially as you have kids growing up and things, you have to guard it because it goes away. I mean, my son was 30 miles from me this weekend and didn't want to see me the whole time. So anyway, no, it's fine. He was, with his friends doing what he wanted to do. That's good. I'm glad. I'm happy for him. It is a little hard, but I get to see him this weekend. So all good.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in and quitting with us this week. If you're new to the podcast, you can visit us at CommandQpodcast.com to learn more about joining the uncommitted community of proud quitters. Check out our full episode library on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. And until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Maari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.